Hey everyone, welcome to the Guide to Surrogacy, the interviews. And we are talking to different people involved in the surrogacy process who aren't me and who have been experiencing it from different perspectives and, quite frankly, have more expert opinions. We've talked to clinicians, we've talked to donors, we're talking to surrogates. Today is going to be particularly interesting because we're looking slightly further out. We're looking at the family of people who benefit from surrogacy. So we're speaking to Alisa. She is the sister of a lady called Nadia who had a baby with her husband Mark through surrogacy. So that will be a unique perspective because we'll be able to understand a bit more how other people benefit from this surrogacy journey. All right, so without further ado, please welcome Alisa. Alisa,
Yes.
thank you very much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you connect to the surrogacy world?
Okay, so my name's Alisa, and my sister and her husband. Well, I'll go right back to the beginning. That my sister had cancer. She had cervical cancer, and unfortunately, as a result of that cancer, it meant that she had secondary infertility. So they went through a series of IVF, which unfortunately didn't work, and that's when they came to surrogacy. And luckily, then they met an incredible surrogate, and that is how my nephew Toby came into the world.
Before this happened,
Yeah.
what was your understanding of surrogacy, like before it entered your world?
Genuinely, my first understanding of surrogacy was it was something that rich people did when they were too posh to push. That was really what I understood about it. I didn't know. I thought it was just always a choice and always an option. It didn't even occur to me that it could be because of infertility or because of not physically being able to have a child. I didn't. It just never occurred to me. So my understanding of surrogacy was, and also that I didn't know it happened in the UK. I thought it was very much an America thing. Isn't that so strange? But yeah, it just didn't occur to me.
A lot of the information out there is very American.
Very American, yeah.
So when you found out that this was something being considered, did you have any questions, or did you have any fears about it?
Yeah, I thought the surrogate might steal the baby. I blame American drama because I think that there's this kind of preconception in storylines that a surrogate has a child, falls in love with that child, and then steals it and runs away. And that was the first thing that jumped to my head. But I met Emma, I met the surrogate, and realised very quickly that was not the case. And also through conversation with my sister and the safeguards put in place and things like that, I kind of understood that was not likely to happen. But I didn't know how the process worked. I didn't know that, first of all, you couldn't ask somebody to be a surrogate. I didn't know about the get to know you, that whole process. That I just didn't know the procedure, and I didn't realize it took such a long time. I think I was so naive about it. So when Nadia first mentioned it, I was so excited because it hadn't occurred to me, and I was so hopeful, but I also had a lot of questions.
Yeah. Was there any fear as well?
Terrified.
Really? How was it as a family member looking into that situation where surrogacy became the only option?
So when you've nearly lost your sister, when somebody says to you, she might not survive, that's the hardest thing in the world because she is my best friend. Sorry. And then when she came through the other side of that, it was incredible, but she didn't come through that whole. She didn't come through that process with all of her, because what was left was damage that meant that she couldn't have a child naturally. And since we were children, we'd always talked about having big families. So she came through, but not all of her hopes and dreams didn't come through. So I watched very slowly parts of my best friend be chipped away every time something didn't work. And I thought, she's not going to get what she wants. And all I wanted was for her to have that. So then when surrogacy came in, and it was an opportunity that actually she was going to get all of the hopes and dreams, Oh, I was so excited. And I want to say that a part of me always knew it would work, but a bigger part of me was so fearful.
With
Because,
hindsight, you do sometimes think, it was smooth the whole way, and then you
yeah,
forget bits.
but no, I mean, and unfortunately, between the cancer diagnosis and surrogacy, we lost both of our parents, both to cancer, which left us caring for our elder sister. And it felt like there was no time for Nadia to grieve everything that had happened to her own body. And this was the only hope she had.
And you must have been terrified for your sister.
I was so scared that it wouldn't work and it would be more heartbreak. Because how could I put that back together again? I can't put that back together again.
So you felt, as a family member, quite a lot of pressure that you needed to get involved to do something to help fix it.
Yeah, when your sister comes to you and says I'm hurting, you want to be able to help. But I couldn't offer to be a surrogate. I wasn't in that position to do that. I would have done anything to have been able to do that, but I couldn't. And I I was so desperate to be hopeful and say this is going to be perfect, this is going to work, everything is going to work out exactly as it should be. You found the solution, well done, sticker. But then part of me is going, oh God, what if it goes wrong? What if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't happen? What if the embryos break down? I didn't know enough to be able to give that advice and say this is definitely going to work. But I was so hopeful. That's all I could bring. That's all I could do.
So when you found out that Nadia and Kaya were in the surrogacy process,
Yeah.
was it as smooth as you wanted it to be, their surrogacy journey?
No. At the very beginning of discussions and conversations and Nadia doing kind of information finding, they had an offer from a friend. Oh my gosh, how exciting. And it was somebody I knew. And I was so happy, so thrilled. It was happening and it was happening fast. And then through a series of unfortunate events, that didn't work out. I'm a fiery little sister that wanted to go around and punch her in the face. And I couldn't do that. And it wasn't, and she was absolutely right that I couldn't do that. I had no way to vent that anger for her. And I had no way to process that or speak to anybody else about it because it's a very, very private situation. I couldn't tell anybody about that.
And it's almost not yours to tell.
It's not mine to tell. And I would never, ever have spoken about that.
So where did that anger go?
It did get internalized and I did have to, kind of work through that anger in other spaces. But yeah, I can't quite describe the anger and the injustice of we were so close and there was so much hope and I just got to see this little glimmer of hope in my sister, and to have that taken away was really hard because all I wanted was to fix her, as we've spoken about, and I couldn't do that, and this person was going to help. And then to take that away, it felt really cruel and unkind. And actually, looking at the big picture, that wasn't the case. They weren't cruel. They weren't unkind. They were doing the absolute right thing. But I was just I was responsive to the anger.
Do you think your sister Nadia was aware of any of this from your perspective?
I knew that she knew I was angry. She knew I was angry, but also I think that was helpful because she couldn't be angry at this person because she's so reasonable and understanding and kind. And I did find that really hard. And then, of course, that made me very, very worried about it happening again.
So when was the first time you met their surrogate, Emma? And how was that?
Do you know what's so funny? I remember, I know what happened. I know that there was a party at Nadia's house and we met, but I had spoken to her via Messenger and WhatsApp beforehand. And when I first met her, it didn't feel like the first time I was meeting her.
Cute.
It felt like somebody I already knew, somebody that was kind of circling the outskirts of our friendship groups already. So it was very, very natural. And that's what's so strange, that there was no it wasn't like a first date meeting, really nervous. It was just like, oh, yay, hey. So it was like immediate friendship. It wasn't forced.
Like she had always been there.
It really, really was like she'd always been there. We actually even ended up having a joint baby shower. Well, I mean, obviously it was Nadia and I's baby shower, but Emma was there and that was wonderful. So that was like a really, I don't know, really special thing to get.
Okay, so talk me through that bit. So when Emma got pregnant and was carrying their baby, what was happening with you at that time?
Right. through a very unexpected set of events. I had not planned to start my family for another couple of years, which was one of the reasons I couldn't offer to be a surrogate for Nadia, because I didn't know if I could carry or. But anyway, through a very unexpected series of events, I was pregnant at the same time. So we conceived pretty much at the identical times. And then it turned out the way it planned out is our babies were due, I think it was about a week apart, maybe a couple of weeks. And they were born within 24 hours of each other. So Emma went into labour and had Toby the early hours of the Saturday morning. And then I had my child early hours of Sunday morning.
Very dramatic.
Very dramatic. And I blame Emma because she went into labour, had Toby, and I think I was so thrilled and so relieved. And you've got to understand that Toby was wished for years. So everything I've wished, hoped, and dreamed for Nadia has arrived safely on the planet. I got to see my sister's face with her baby. I got to see Mark with with his baby. I just relaxed. I was like, this is it. This is the moment that they have been waiting for. And I think where I relaxed, my baby went, it's time to shine.
Now's my chance.
Now's my chance. And made a break for it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So when did you first get to meet your new nephew?
It was a couple of, I think there were 4 or 5 days. It was the Wednesday. So 4 days old. And Nadia had been in Yorkshire and couldn't get to me. And she was very cross that when I was in labour, she couldn't get to me because we are very close. And we had planned that she would be in the hospital. But that didn't work out. And actually, the most amazing moment of the whole process for me was opening my door to see Nadia. Holding Toby. And at the same time, I was holding my baby. So we got to introduce our babies to each other.
That was a special moment.
It was a really special moment because it was just, I mean, first of all, you couldn't write it. But second of all, there was a time that I didn't know I'd get to have my sister. So then to have your sister and her son, the child that you've all prayed for, right next to you when you can introduce your daughter to her, it was just like, it was unbelievable.
Perfect moment.
Oh, you just could never imagine it. It was like, it felt like I was in a film. And also it just felt so healing. We didn't have our parents throughout this entire process, and I couldn't introduce my child to my parents, but I could introduce them to my sister. And at the same time, I could meet my nephew. So it was magical.
Parents were with you.
I think they sent them. I think there was a master plan. I used to have a dream. I had a dream. This is very like off the topic, but I had a dream before all of the IVF that Nadia was going to have twins and it was going to be a boy and a girl. What I didn't realise is one of them was mine.
Right, so we are at the point now where you've met your wonderful new family member, who Nadia and Mark have now got, their second child. Looking back at that whole surrogacy process, were there any surprises?
I think I mentioned how long the process takes and all of the, having to speak to, I don't know if it's counsellors or therapists, but I know that it's mental health professionals, and going through all of that process and the paperwork. I think the thing that really surprised me was I didn't realise about the parental orders after birth. I didn't realise about all of that, and to me it was so shocking because genetically that child belongs to my sister and her husband, but legally Emma's down as the birth mother, and that I found really shocking and quite hard. So yeah, that was a bit of a surprise when I found out. Of course, I understand, but it was a bit of a surprise, that one.
Were there any myths or anything you'd heard about surrogacy that were dispelled or that you wish people understood better, who might be new to this?
I didn't know that you can't ask somebody to be a surrogate. I didn't realize it wasn't like a service that somebody has to offer, that and that you get into this agreement, the get to know you phase, and that agreement doesn't necessarily mean that you move ahead. That it's a much more kind of, I want to use the word like holistic almost process rather than a transactional process.
Altruistic is the word.
Altruistic. There you are then. It's a much more altruistic process than transactional. And I didn't know that was a thing. So that for me was, again, interesting, more than surprising. I think when it was explained to me, it made complete sense.
The fact that there are women out there that are prepared to do this,
I don't know,
and it blows other women's minds.
It blows my mind, especially women who have already completed their own families and then are willing to go through pregnancy again. As somebody who's gone through pregnancy, it wasn't easy, and I am aware some people breathe through it, but I think that every pregnancy has its challenges and every pregnancy has its risks, and to be able to be willing to take those risks and to be willing to face those challenges on behalf of people that you may have only met a matter of months ago is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And what I've learned more about surrogates than anything is that it's not for the money. It's never for money. It's always for the greater purpose of building families, or it's always for the greater purpose of completing families that maybe weren't finished. And I've never come across a story where it hasn't come from a good place.
Have you heard many people with negative opinions since coming out of this? Have you almost tried to educate people on the process?
I've heard the very regular opinion that it might be harmful to a child, but as I have said before, that I conducted the greatest ever science experiment with my child, because our children were delivered within 24 hours of each other, and there is nothing different about our kids. Absolutely. I think I just knocked the mic. Sorry. There is absolutely nothing different about our children. They are identical to each other. They hit milestones within hours of each other. They are emotionally, socially, physically, every single aspect of their life, they are identical to each other. There is no difference. And the way they love is exactly the same. There has been no harm. There has been nothing except for positive, wonderful experiences for us as a family. And I think that when you've got two children who have really come from very similar family backgrounds, who are genetically related, if there was any harm, you would be able to tell in that experiment. And actually, all you can tell is that it's just there's nothing harmful about that.
When you talk about harm, are you talking about the idea that he is no longer with a surrogate?
Yeah, that it might be emotional distress, or that he might have developed differently. No, that's just not the case at all. Within minutes, he was with his mother, and his mother is my sister, and he knew that that's where he needed to be, and that's exactly the right place for him. And he was content and comfortable and happy. And there was absolutely no point where he was emotionally distressed or upset because he wasn't with the surrogate. So, because Emma grew him, but Nadia made him out of love. So they're very different things.
So if there are people watching this video who have a family member who is considering or in the process of doing surrogacy, is there anything that you wish you knew at the start, or anything you would like to say to other family members? What can they do to help the situation? Is there anything you can do to allay any fears?
First of all, you're not going to feel differently about that child to anybody else in your family. I feel exactly the same about Toby, my nephew, as I do about Kaya, my niece, who was carried naturally by Nadia. I don't even like the word naturally, to be honest, because Toby was carried naturally. He just came through a different conduit, that's all. There's no difference in them. I, as a family member, do not feel any emotional. I love Toby just as much as I love Kaya, and he is just as much my family and always has been. And I don't even think about the way he got here. So I think that before he arrived, I often thought if I would, remember that. I barely remember it happening. I know that all happened, but when I'm with him, it's insignificant. His being here is far more important. And I think I would want family members, A, to know that, but also B, to know that you have to hold hope. It's a long process. It's a very hard process. It is emotionally challenging. It's tiring. And you have to be the one to stand next to them and be hopeful consistently. Because sometimes when there's challenges, you're the person they're going to turn to talk about that. Educate yourself as much as you can, so you know the terminology, you know what they're saying, you understand the process. But really, for me, it was the emotional support, that I will be there to be the positive one on the days that you can't do it. On the days that you feel like nothing is going right and this isn't going to happen, I'm going to hope for you. Because actually then, if we put enough of that into the universe, who knows what's going to come back, and we got Toby out of it. And I do think that was helpful to Nadia and Mark, is just having people on their side that supported them 100%, even if there were days that I didn't really understand what was happening. Just hope and just support.
Excellent advice. So now that Nadia and Mark have completed their family, and Nadia is now offering hope to other people that can't have families by offering to be a known egg donor, does that stir any feelings up with you that your family genes are going to be assisting other people, or?
Not at all. I mean, why wouldn't you want to have my sister's genes in your family? They're good genes. All I think is, oh, you lucky people. We've got a great set of family members. They're going to be hilarious. They're going to be ridiculous. Congratulations. No, not at all. At the end of the day, if these types of people weren't around to do something like that, then there will be lots of children that don't have love the way that they deserve. And there will be lots of adults who don't get to love children, who are going to be the most stunning parents. And the way I see it is, it's just, giving back.
Giving back. There is a lot of love in the surrogacy community.
Yeah.
And it's there for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah. And why would you not want a child to come into the world where you know they're going to be loved?
Said. So just to round up, is there anything else that you feel you would like to put out there that we haven't covered so far? Any last final thoughts you'd want people to take away?
That I'm incredibly grateful to the surrogates that are part of the community, because without them being as generous with themselves, we wouldn't have families. There would be lots of people who don't have the incredible families they have. And I think that they are an incredible, incredible set of people. I don't know how they do it. I think they're wonderful. But I'm also really grateful for Surrogacy UK in general, and these types of communities, because it gives a lifeline. So I just think it's really important to keep advocating for surrogacy as a process, because it's so important and it's so worth it. If it works, it's so worth it.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much for your time.
Round of applause.
Thank you so much for taking that time to speak to us, Alisa. We really appreciated it, and it's definitely a moving story. I'm sure that would have generated some comments, so if you have any questions, leave them below and I will get them to her, or maybe try and answer them myself. Really depends what you want to know. Like, follow and subscribe if you could. It's helpful for me because I don't benefit from these at all. And I will catch you next time on The Guide to Surrogacy, the interviews. I don't know what that is. See you later. Bye-bye.